The final ascent functions as a structural blueprint, mapping internal trauma directly onto the physical geography of first-century Jerusalem. The narrative offers no internal monologue. Instead, it communicates the protagonist's state of mind through stark environmental cues in sound and light. We see a solitary protagonist caught in the overlap between two systems, the Judean religious elite and the Roman imperial machine. This 3D map highlights the chronological route, organizing the narrative's escalation into a series of stations of power. The path is divided into 4 distinct color-coded political zones. Each geographic shift introduces a new socio-political threat. This geopolitical geometry explains how the protagonist survives the total collapse of his inner circle. The Garden of Gethsemane serves as a zone of isolation, characterized by moonlight and low, rhythmic sounds. The text provides specific physiological evidence of the protagonist's internal state. Hematidrosis, sweating blood, shows the body reacting to extreme psychological trauma. Nearby, the sleeping disciples represent a failure of passive loyalty against the encroaching threat. This failure is followed by an active betrayal. Judas arrives as a calculated political guide for the executioners. The arrest is driven by a physical transaction, 30 pieces of silver scattered on a stone floor. When the guards arrive, the agonizing terror vanishes. He identifies himself with an authority that causes the guards to stumble back, and his final action before his surrender is to heal the man sent to arrest him. The wilderness acts as a crucible. Once the state apparatus engages, the internal struggle gives way to an unyielding silence. In the houses of Annas and Caiaphas, the environment becomes claustrophobic, filled with flickering candles and the sound of echoing water. The Sanhedrin's motivation is the preservation of their institution. They are defending absolute control over local religious orthodoxy against an insurgent threat. The trial is defined by chaos. A series of witnesses offer contradictory lies, representing a breakdown of the court's structural justice. The charge of blasphemy serves a political purpose. It is the specific lever used to secure a Roman death sentence. Outside the court, Peter denies knowing the man, while Judas realizes he has been used as a disposable pawn. The religious court sequence demonstrates institutional preservation succeeding, while personal loyalty fails. Inside the Praetorium, the architecture shifts to a massive scale, representing the cold bureaucracy of Rome. Pontius Pilate functions as a Roman administrator. His goal is not to judge theology, but to prevent a riot. Pilate attempts to use political release valves, routing the jurisdiction to Herod and offering the mob a choice between the protagonist and a prisoner named Barabbas. The text highlights the contrast between the violent Barabbas and the battered, silent protagonist. The mob uses Roman imperial policy against Pilate, threatening that any leniency makes him no friend of Caesar. Pilate washing his hands in a silver basin is a gesture to symbolically absolve the bureaucracy of the violence that follows. The Praetorium reveals how bureaucratic neutrality collapses when threatened by mass political violence. The Roman scourging, or intermedia mors, was a punishment designed to strip away the subject's physical humanity. The text relies on brutal audio cues to convey the mechanical severity of the extreme violence taking place. In the barracks, the crown of thorns serves as a political parody of the protagonist's perceived threat. Throughout the entire torture process, the protagonist remains complete and silent. These sensory extremes show that state-sponsored physical destruction cannot break the protagonist's psychological stoicism. The topography shifts to a sharp elevation graph, mapping the steep incline of the Via Dolorosa. A red timeline tracks the physical falls through the streets as the weight of the wood breaks the protagonist's body. Golgotha is a barren location filled with the sensory details of dust, sweat, and iron. The protagonist rejects the numbing drink of wine and gall, choosing to face the execution with total cognitive clarity. This ascent shows the protagonist's resolve is absolute, rejecting any chemical or psychological escape from the reality of the event. The final securing of the protagonist involves industrial iron spikes driven through the nerves of the wrists and feet. Above his head, The titulus serves as a piece of Roman administrative messaging broadcasted in 3 languages. The psychological arc concludes in the deep noon darkness with a final cry of cosmic abandonment. Eloi, Eloi. This despair is followed by the shout of Tetelestai, a word marking a completed task. This death is marked by symbols of institutional collapse, specifically the violent tearing of the massive temple veil. At the cross, the Roman centurion acknowledges the identity of the victim, signaling that the imperial perspective has shifted. This internal, psychological victory creates physical fractures in the systems of Rome and Jerusalem,